Does Christian have any announcements? Cool, cool. Um, though, except for watch out for the mosquitoes, yeah. Um, so, you're, of course, all our special guests, but I'm going to introduce you to two of our particularly special guests tonight. Our two guest artists, Sharon Dodua Otoo and Sandrine Micossé-Aikins. The BGHRA Program Committee discovered Sharon's and Sandrine's work because of the wonderful and path-breaking book they co-edited, The Little Book of Big Visions, How to Be an Artist and Revolutionize the World, and they have thoughtfully left copies of that book up here. So I'm sure you've seen that they're for sale out on the table. And I understand, if you haven't found this out already, that you can exchange money with the people at the desk. And that book appeared in October 2012, and it includes contributions from a number of the important Black artists working in Germany, including Philip Kabel-Kapsel, who was a guest at last year's convention. I think that they're going to tell you some more. I strongly suspect, especially since this book is up here on the podium, through no doing of my own, that they're going to tell you some more about that book. You might want to look at the website for the book because it's very engaging, and I'm going to read you a little bit about what the website tells us. The collection, quote, discusses the current situation of Black artists in Germany and presents their visions for equality in text and image form. This results in an innovative work engaging in a discourse reaching far beyond concepts of integration or migration or even race or equality themselves. This anthology is aimed primarily at Black cultural producers living and working in Germany, as well as those who reside in English-speaking contexts throughout the diaspora. However, this book is also aimed at everyone who has an interest in revolutionizing the contemporary art scene in Germany, and I'm sure that's all of us, and ensuring that it finally begins to be truly reflective of its actual and future populations. I think it will also be important for all of us to keep our eyes on the publisher of this book collection, which is Edition Assemblage in Münster. I think in some complicated ways it grew out of the Unrast Verlag. And the motto of this publisher is something I can't translate very well, Begleiterscheinungen emanzipatorischer Theorie und Praxis. And I don't really know how to translate Begleiterscheinungen, and nobody's really been able to help me, except that Maisha pointed out it's also a pun, which makes it even harder. So it's sort of things which accompany emancipatory theory and practice, which is a good thing. Their website explains that they've chosen this name for their assemblage for their publishing venture because an assemblage lives not from one, but from many possible alternatives, and they want to emphasize that not a single political way is the right and possible one, but that many alternatives are possible, which is certainly a very refreshing position. Edition Assemblage is publishing extremely important books about politics and culture in Germany and the rest of the world, including also by mail, a play by Olomino Popola, who was also a guest artist last year, and Sharon's novella, The Things I'm Thinking While Smiling Politely, which is also for sale out there and was published in February 2012. Sharon is also the editor of Edition Assemblage's English language book series Witnessed, which was launched with great fanfare in September 2012. And on their website, Edition Assemblage also says that they are insisting on publishing books in many languages because the so-called German-speaking countries are countries where many languages are spoken, and I think that's also a very refreshing position. So both of our guests today bring with them impressive credentials for talking about Black German artists in today's Germany. Sharon is a mother of 4 children, in fact, an activist and actress, as well as author and editor, originally a Black British woman who now makes her home in Berlin. She received a BA degree in German and Management Studies from the Royal Holloway College of the University of London and worked in various consultancy roles in London and Brighton in the area of anti-racism, race equality, and corporate social responsibility before moving to Berlin. As she emphasizes, empowerment plays a key role in all aspects of her work. And as I was Googling around on the web trying to write this introduction, I found this kind of wonderful article by Sharon and a wonderful article by Sandrine, which I think would be very useful to use in class with students. And the Sharon's article is called "Correct Me If I Am Politically Wrong, Real Art, Elitism, and White Delusions of Grandeur." And you can find that on the web. So Sandrine is also a mother, though of only 1 child so far, a curator, art theorist, so far, and activist whose work revolves around the politics of imagery and artistic everyday practices, especially with regards to coloniality, racism, whiteness, and empowerment. She draws on her experiences as a Togolese German artist to combine various art forms in order to question aspects of identity and belonging, ascriptions and unequal power relations, exclusion, and self-empowerment. She's studied and worked in Mauritius, among other places, completed the master's program Art in Context at the University of Arts in Berlin, and is currently writing a dissertation on the politics of hair in Ghana. She co-curated and supervised the project Prêt à Partager for the German Institute for Foreign Cultural Relations, which included the symposium Where We Meet, Cultural Translation and Art in Social Transformation, focused on African artists, and she also organized a series of events around the theme Repositioning Critical Whiteness Perspectives of Color. And she is the author of the article, also wonderful for students, 7 Things You Can Do to Make Your Art Less Racist, a comprehensive how-to guide. Encourage you to look these up. So as you can tell from this sort of brief listing of their accomplishments, we can learn a lot from these women, and I'm very happy to present them to you now. So welcome.
I'll be here. Names are important, but I no longer know mine. I've never cared so much for my so-called maiden name. Some officially suited white lady once glared at me in barely hidden disgust when, in response to her customer service-trained polite inquiry, I told her that it really didn't matter how she pronounced it. Yes, it does. She clenched her teeth slightly, but definitely as she spoke. It is your surname. My eye spotted something quite amazing on a wall somewhere to the right of her head. Perhaps she had identity issues of her own. In any case, I really didn't care. I didn't even quite know how to bend and squash my Ghanaian name to suit English tongues. And leaving it to freely expand across my lips in its full tonal glory, that would simply underline even more how much I really did not belong. I wish Auntie had thought of that and had given me appropriate Afrocentric guidance before abandoning me to the indoctrination generally referred to as the British education system. I may have better learnt how to handle my identity in public. Yeah, and the other reason that I mistreated my name was because I did not want to be associated with my father any second longer than strictly necessary. Emotionally, I left England on the morning of my 8th birthday. Physically, following several forced starts, I made it out just after I turned 18. So you see, it was a matter of great inspiration to me meeting Till on my year abroad in Germany. Someone with a surname so unambiguously of the country he was born, raised and lived in that I thought, how sexy is that? And I knew that I had to make it my own. This, however, didn't stop other officially suited white ladies in cold offices from saying, wie bitte? And asking me to repeat myself, like they were disappointed because they'd been expecting me to be called something resembling di Bondingo or something like that. Several months after we were married, I discovered that Peters was also the surname of a German colonial aggressor. And although I didn't begin to hate it then, I did stop adorning myself with it like it was some magnificent fur coat. And I began instead to treat it like an ugly scarf. Functional and necessary in cold weather, but not my item of choice, and it wouldn't matter that much if I misplaced it one day or perhaps lent it to someone in need and it was never returned. Till, who had never really known his father, had had little understanding for my obsession with his surname, and he was mostly amused whenever I began to stammer when I introduced myself or our children. And in the beginning, we had joked about making up a name of our own. Now I realised that if we had, at least I could have kept my half of it with me now that he is gone. Being caught between the names of two men who have abandoned me is kind of disorientating. And the last thought I had before I fell asleep on that morning, the one after the party, the one following which I had emptied the contents of my stomach into the toilet pan, was, how would the children feel if they had to change their names too? That was an extract from The Things I'm Thinking While Smiling Politely. And I chose to read that straight away so that you know that why it was that for such a long portion of my life I wasn't able to pronounce my own name. I wanted to say thank you for the invitation, Rosemary, to be here, and thank you for everybody who's been involved in organising this event, and also for the inspiring contributions so far. I've been including lots of things into my presentation at the last minute based on the life stories that we heard yesterday, and your presentation, Maisha, and things that have happened also today. So I'll be jumping off here and there sometimes. Today, it's already been mentioned that I have various roles, and I identify as various things. I am a mother, activist, author and editor, and I wanted to position myself at the moment as a black British woman who lives in Berlin. So I don't speak for the Afro-German community, but I'm very involved, and my children are Afro-German. And I wanted to talk a bit about all of those things, all of those different roles, how they fit together, and how they all came together to produce the book, The Little Book of Big Visions. So I'll begin with my role as a mother. And in order to help, I brought along some guests with me. I do have 4 children. What I did was ask permission to show photographs of them, and only 2 of them were actually in a position to say yes, actually. So, and I wanted to begin by telling some stories about them. I want to tell stories actually today, and to begin with, I wanted to tell some stories about my children. My oldest son is called Dion, who's not on the picture. He's now 17. I heard from his Spanish teacher 2 or 3 years ago when I went to a parents' evening that Dion was very sensitive about his skin colour. And I asked her what she meant, and she told me that of an experience she'd had with him, which was that he had been sitting in class with the rest of his class learning Spanish, or maybe trying to learn Spanish, and at some point he stood up and said, "I'm leaving now." And the teacher said, "Why? What's going on?" And Dion said, "This guy sitting next to me, my friend, or so-called friend, has been making fun of me the whole time, calling me racist names, and you didn't do anything." He addressed the teacher directly. "You didn't do anything about it, and now I've had enough, I'm going." And the teacher obviously then was taken by surprise, and then asked him to sit down, and then addressed the whole class and told the whole class about how it's not good to be unkind to children and so on. And a discussion started, and the friend in the end apologized. And I told the teacher I don't think he has a problem at all. And I found that a very interesting experience, particularly because Dion didn't tell me about it himself. I have 3 stories that I've noted that I would like to tell about Tyrell, but I don't think I have enough time to say all of them. So 1, 2, or 3? Put your hand up. 3? Okay, I'll tell all of them. Tyrell is the one with both arms up. He's now 14, but that picture was taken 3 years ago or so. Okay, the first story I'd like to tell is of Tyrell in a German lesson. In the German lesson, the teacher brought out a text, which is a text that's apparently very often used in schools, which is called Die Probe. And in this text, there's a description of a white German man doing something. I don't know what he's doing, but he ends up going into a cafe and he sees a black man, and the vocabulary used to describe the black man and the imagery used to describe the black man was, yeah, very stereotypical and racist. Tyrell and I were doing homework together, and I saw this and I was completely shocked, and I wrote a furious letter to the school, which Tyrell was very happy to deliver to the teacher. And that text was supposed to be a practice text, just to practice summarizing. And he was supposed to be doing a test on that morning. And he decided that he didn't believe that his teacher had taken the incident seriously, so he refused to sit the test. And he asked to speak to the teacher outside, and then she tried to persuade him to come back in, and then she told him that he was being stubborn, and then she tried all sorts of tricks, but in the end he stayed outside and he got a 6 for that test. That story happened last September, and it still hasn't been resolved. But what happened to Tyrell in the meantime was he was kind of put under a lot of pressure because the school teaching staff stuck together behind this teacher and said, of course she's not racist, she wouldn't ever do something terrible like that. And the children didn't really understand. And Tyrell wanted to leave school, and we looked at a new school and he almost left, but somehow through his, staying at his position and not moving, other black children started to talk to him about other experiences that they'd been having. And to cut a long story short, in the end, Tyrell brought a couple of his friends to Bundestreffen. And he's staying at Nelson Mandela. Oh, I've mentioned the name now. He's staying at the school, and he's going to keep on fighting his position. That's story number 1. Story number 2 is I'd like to give Tyrell credit for something that happened recently. You may or may not have heard about the Tats incident. There was a panel discussion in Berlin in April, which I participated in, which went terribly wrong. And the person who was moderating the panel behaved very badly, used lots of racist words, and then ended up screaming at the public because they complained about it. That can all be read up on, on the web. My son Tyrell was also in the audience, and he was one of the people who were saying, hey, just say N-word. You don't have to keep repeating this racist word. And the guy shouted at him, actually. And then Tyrell stood up and left. And he was the very first person to stand up. And then following him were 30 other people in the crowd. And I left as well. So I had to give him credit for that whole public. It was really him. And then the third story I'd like to tell you happened he was about 10 when that happened. We went to the Bundestag. They were having a Tag der Öffnetur, open day. And the Bundespressesprecher of Angela Merkel, who's a press speaker, I guess, was giving a talk about how important he was. He was giving a talk about how he works. And he then dropped the sentence, yes, and we also have, I don't know, we do lots of work with Africa, and as you know, Africa is a very big country, and he carried on. So Tyrell sticks his hand up in the air, and this place is full of journalists and people and everything, and I'm still too British for that kind of behavior. And the man looks at him and says, yes, what would you like to say? And he says, you just said that Africa is a country. You don't mean that, do you? It's a continent. And that story, actually, at the end, journalists came up to him and wrote down his name, and they printed that. It was very exciting. So, and the last story I want to tell is one about Lewis, he's in the towel. And last year, we have lots of these racist incidents, and we talk about them a lot. Last year, Lewis was playing a kind of game where you have to guess the name of things, and the name that the educational assistant he was playing with guessed was the other name for Schokokuss. And Lewis got into a discussion with his education assistant, you know, that's not really a cool word, people don't say that anymore. And the educational assistant said, no, you're being sensitive, and anyway, I have more black friends than you, so I know better. And Lewis left the school. He picked up his bags and walked straight out, came home. And that story also has a happy end because apparently a few weeks later, no, I mean, that's a much longer story because they did have really big arguments also, and Lewis told him that he refused to speak to him. He didn't want to have anything to do with him in school. And then I also spoke to the education assistant, and he didn't really agree with me. But apparently, now many months later, the educational assistant has actually told Lewis that he is sorry and that he sees that he shouldn't have used that word. So that's the backdrop. We've been talking a lot in the last 2 days about afro-germans and their situation in Germany, and some of the stories have been very sad and touching, and we've also raised in discussion today about what agency do Afro-Germans have, and I wanted to tell those stories because these are children who are really, resistance and empowerment is the key terms. They're really very, very confident and looking people straight in the eye and challenging them whenever they experience discrimination and racism. How do these stories make me feel? As a mother, I feel very jealous, to be honest, because when I was their age, I would never have said or done anything like that. But I'm also very proud, and I'm very inspired by them. And as an activist, I think that they're not exceptions. There are many Afro-German children growing up now who do similar things. We had a recent meeting, a Vernetzungstreffen of the Initiative of Black People in Germany, where for the first time we had children attending the meeting, and the children were telling the stories of what they experienced in school, but also of what they're doing about it and how they're resisting and empowering themselves. Yeah, and as an artist, I've been thinking about how to incorporate these stories and these images. So thinking about what you were saying, Naisha, about dominant images and how to maybe play around with those, reverse those perhaps, and have tried to use them in my artistic work. It's been mentioned that I worked as a consultant before. I was doing terrible work. I was going to Bangladesh and working with people. I don't know. Something made no sense. But I decided to stop doing that, and I've always loved to write. I've always written, and then I decided I'm going to really try to follow my creative dreams. So at the beginning of 2012, The Things I'm Thinking While Smiling Politely was published, my first novel. And it's a book which tries to tell a story that could be experienced by anybody. It's the breakup of a marriage. What was that? Shall I say breakup of a marriage again? Okay. Breakup of a marriage, these two people are drifting apart, and it examines the effect of this breakup on family, on friends, on the protagonists themselves. But the whole story is told from a black perspective, from a female black British perspective, actually. And I'm going to read another extract from The Things, which talks a little bit about the main character's relationship to her children. I wrote down the wrong number, I can see. Okay. They say everyone has a novel in them. I'm definitely not a creative writer, but if I ever met anyone who would be prepared to edit my unfinished song lyrics and tear-stained diaries into a work of fiction, I would probably choose the title, How to Love a Child, Even As You Feel the Strong Desire to Kick Her Up the Butt. And I would dedicate it to Beth. My latest conclusion was that she and I had both been done a great injustice. Wait a minute, that's the book. Why, of all people, had this particular girl and this particular woman been chained together in a mother-daughter relationship? I was often told that we were both great individuals, just sadly too different, or too similar, or something equally profound. It took me years to accept the fact that we simply did not like each other. And I know that mothers are not supposed to say that, but hey, if it's the truth, why hide it? Beth frustrated me because she is the kind of person who will always land on her feet. She lives in a time where it is perfectly reasonable for her to want to become a rap artist or a basketball player. And my attempts to explain to her about racial stereotypes end at best in me being ridiculed. And the truly irritating part is, she constantly proves me wrong. She's trying for the national basketball team next year and she wins every poetry slam she enters. Her self-esteem seems to transcend her blackness, and it's a language I simply do not understand. I grew up as the only black girl in a London suburb, where I quickly learned that trouble could be avoided if I acted white. Of course, I didn't succeed in convincing anyone that I was, but my attempts were so credible that I really suffered very little. The children I played with could ask me ignorant questions about my hair or make rude comments about my skin colour, and I would just laugh as loud as they when they did so. I only realised I was black at those times when another black child would appear in the group. A new girl in school perhaps, or a family friend coming to visit. And each time I found those counters confusing and disorientated, and I avoided contact. Beth, on the other hand, marches through the world with her head held high, not giving a damn about what anyone else thinks. Although they are not identical twins, Ash and Beth both prefer an androgynous look. Long hair, usually in cornrows, but sometimes in an Angela Davis-style fro, and sporty clothing. So people often confuse them. This means that Ash will sometimes be shouted at by some irate worker in the electronic items section of Saturn for daring to enter the store even though she has been banned. Or Beth will be stopped in the street, given €2 by a friendly pensioner, and thanked once again for having kindly carried up the shopping to her 4th floor flat the day before. Sometimes it even affects her school grades. Amma tells me that they come out slightly better for Beth than they should, because some of the lazier teachers get confused but don't want to admit it. And Beth, of course, uses this to her own advantage. She's not stupid. I think Ash has suffered, but all in all, he seems to find it more important to cover for Beth's recklessness than to try and clear his own name. I try to fight that, but in the end, I can't come between them, and I think that this is probably a good thing. I can't turn to Auntie for advice. She doesn't understand my parenting at all. And when it comes to Beth, Auntie is convinced that I've brought it all on myself. She has still not forgiven me for not piercing Beth's ears at birth. And she still does not understand why Beth does not straighten her hair, or at least get some nice hair extensions like Amma. And she was truly shocked when she first realised that I had not raised Beth to hand wash her own underwear every night. Just because she has a whitey father doesn't mean she is not a Ghanaian. Actually, I laughed very hard after I put the phone down, but when I told Till later what Auntie had said, he was not amused. And whenever Ash talks back to me within Auntie's earshot, she raises her eyebrows. I can actually hear them creaking up as it happens when we are on the phone, and my heart sinks. Because I know a long lecture about the benefits of sending my children back to Ghana before Germany ruins them for good will follow shortly. They need to learn to respect their elders. This was her mantra even when I was a child, and what she does not realise though is that it worked back then because there was only one of me versus 3 adults. Now I'm outnumbered again, but not in a way that is conducive to raising well-adjusted, God-fearing and elder-respecting Ghanaian children. Auntie wanted to support me with her regular telephone advice sessions, but the truth is they comforted her more than they comforted me. And since Beth and I agreed on almost nothing, I mostly observed her various developments from an emotional distance. It seemed to me she preferred to raise herself, and was certainly prepared to forego the benefit of my wisdom. It seemed to her that I had accepted defeat and focused my motherly energy instead on the one remaining child of mine who was still able to appreciate it. Most times I was able to hide my sadness from Ash. Once, though, after another lengthy and heated debate with Beth, which had taken place in the bathroom and had ended after an entire tube of toothpaste had been squirted all around the bathtub, I had muttered something under my breath in Ga that my mother used to shout at me all the time. It's about the only fluent sentence in Ga I can say. Beth had already gone, but I didn't realise that I wasn't alone. "What does that mean?" Ash had asked. I turned to see him looking at me. The one time he had come straight away, when I had asked him moments before to get the clean clothes out of the washing machine. I told him it was a traditional old African saying, and he didn't buy it. So there was an image in that section of Afro-German children who, again, are full of agency and acting. And I wanted to also present characters in the book or in my creative work who are not necessarily, who are not at all flawless, actually. All the characters have a little bit of things that you wouldn't admire about them. And and Beth is the character in my book, which I find quite interesting in that respect. Tales of resistance and empowerment. The things I'm thinking while smiling politely is something that is added to the stories that many Afro-Germans are already telling. And on the next slide, I've given some examples of other tales that are being told or have been told. Where shall I begin? Okay, the top left is the poster of a film that is currently being written. The screenplay is being written, and the producers are trying to raise money for it. Rhineland. That, by the way, is my third baby, Lewis. He's the main character. In the middle, we have McConnell. Maisha mentioned him yesterday. He's the father of Timnit. And through his intervention, the whole language debate about the use of racist language in children's books was kicked off once again in Germany. The top right is an image from the Afro-German theatre group Les Noir, who are a group of extremely talented actors and actresses who are no longer going to sit around and wait to be offered sensible roles in the German theatre scene, but have now created their own theatre company and agency. That picture is a scene from their play Heimat, Bitte Süße Heimat, which was mentioned by Vanessa in her talk. An excellent production. The image at the bottom is of an empowerment theatre group called Young Stars. Sadly, they don't exist anymore, but they created a play around about 2009, 2010, which was based on their own experiences of growing up as young black people in Germany. They met over a period of 2 years to develop that play, and then they took it on tour in their home cities. And that play was called Real Life Deutschland. That letter is a letter from Ishema Kane, who wrote to the Zeit, the newspaper that basically because of this children's book debate that happened in Germany this year, the Zeit threw its teddy bear out of the pushchair, I would say, and decided to make a big cover with a racist word and protest that it is okay to use that racist word. And this 9-year-old girl wrote a very stinky complaint and became famous all across Germany and indeed internationally. There was a translated version into English that was circulating the internet also. And then you may know edutainment attacker Noah Soa has come for the last 2 years to this convention, also intervening in the artistic scene in Germany to try to make it less racist, which we're still trying. Yeah. So this has already been going on and much more. These are just a few examples. I arrived in Germany in 2006, coming from a race equality background in the UK, and had hoped that I would be able to find work as a race equality person in Germany, and quickly realized the discourse isn't that far yet in Germany. We're still talking about integrating people and teaching them to speak German, and then they'll be fine. And I got fed up of looking for work in a field that didn't exist, and threw my energies into activism, and realized that I could perhaps use my tools, the gifts I've been given, so being able to speak English perhaps, to support the work of activists in Germany, through my writing and editing. So what I did was I started the Witness series. I had contact to the publisher Édition Assemblage, and I put forward a proposal, and luckily he liked the idea. And I told him that what I wanted to do was to create a book series written in English, which would tell or which would provide a platform, let's say, for people, various people, to tell of their experiences of being black in Germany. However, it's the idea really is to provide a platform for people to put their perspective on things. So it's reversing the gaze. It's really talking about, what the hell are those crazy Germans doing? Let's tell everybody about it. That's really what the idea of Witness is. Yeah. So I'm going to present 3 of the books of the Witness series in reverse order. This is the 3rd book, which hasn't been published yet, but with your help, maybe we can make it. No, Daima will be published at the end of this year. It's a photo book, which will be showing images of black women in Germany. I'm going to show you the fundraising website when I work out how to do that. There's a website called startnext.de/Daima, and it's a crowdfunding website, and anybody can visit this website and choose one of these. Actually, maybe I'll go to the English version. It's in 2 languages. Right, so this is the crowdfunding website for the project Daima. You'll see on the right-hand side there are so-called rewards. If you would like to make a donation, you may very happily do so, and in return you will get one of these lovely gifts. For anyone who feels like donating 150 euros, you'll get a personal visit, although you'd have to pay the flight, so maybe it wouldn't work. As you can see, we're very close. We're trying to raise 1,200, and it looks like we're very, very close. So I will show you the clip of the project so that you can get more information about it.
We're talking about the book Daima. Daima means forever, and it's about black women and in Germany, or black German women. And I think it's very important we produce this book, because I think I haven't read something about black women in general so much, and I think for the English-speaking countries, it's also important to read about us.
Yeah, Daima is going to be the 3rd book in the Witness series. So we've already had 2 publications that have talked about what it's like to be black in Germany. And this is a really important book, this 3rd book, because it's a photo book. So we'll see lots of beautiful images of different women. Some of them women who were like single portraits, some in pairs and some in groups.
My name is Tina, and I think this project is important because when I came to Europe, I had an entirely different impression of what I was and of what people would think I was. I thought people would think that I was me the way I thought about myself. I didn't realize that when they saw me, they would already have in their minds thousands and thousands of clips from films of famine, and strangely, perhaps places where people lived in trees, which I never saw before I moved to Europe. I was in Africa, but I didn't have these images in my head of terrible, terrible poverty, of people not caring about each other. And now I realize that the boxes that people put me in when they see me are boxes with images with which I'm completely unfamiliar. So this is my story about the people that I know, about the black women that I know and the black families that I know.
My name is Maisha. I'm interested in doing this project because it's about the daily lives of black women. It's about our perspectives on what the world is like, and I really enjoy continuous stories that kind of link into each other, so it's exciting to be in this project with other black women.
I wanted to quickly mention at this point that these projects are quite difficult to raise. So, I mean, it's a bit cheeky of me to ask you for money. I'm not really asking you for money. I'm just informing you in case you have a spare few euros lying around that you could support something, a worthy cause. I wanted to just inform you, though, that these projects are really difficult to raise money for in Germany because, like I said, the context in Germany is such that race equality isn't a concept that really exists, and it's more about integration. So a project that's been carried out in a language that isn't German is frowned upon because we should be trying to learn German and not, speaking our own languages. And so I found a very reliable and engaging, interactive way to raise money is to use these crowdfunding websites, and that's how the first 2 books were financed. Okay. Then the second book that was published in the Witness series, as has already been mentioned, is Also by Mail, written by Olumide Popoula, who was here last year. This book is a play, and it tells the story of 2 Afro-German siblings, Wale and Funke, who find out that their father has died, and they travel to Nigeria to attend the funeral. They have all sorts of wonderful, interesting experiences in Nigeria, and they also reflect on their lives in Germany. And in fact, Wale travels back to Germany after some cultural clashes, I would say, with his uncle, and it gets thrown right into an experience of racial profiling. So Also by Mail brings up all sorts of different stories, different experiences of racism depending on your position as a black person. So Wale's father, who passed away, comes to his daughter in a dream sequence and tells her of his experience as an African immigrant, what he experienced. And then this is contrasted with Funke's own experiences as a black woman and Wale's as a black man. We chose, well, I'd asked Olumide if she would write a play for the Witness series because I felt that it would be really good to have a format that was interactive also, for example, to be used in lessons, maybe English lessons in Germany. And therefore, at the back of the book, there are some educational materials, so you can learn more about the subjects, the issues that have been raised. Then, the very first book that was published in the Witness series came out like this time, well, October last year, The Little Book of Big Visions. I would really like to say thank you to Sandrine at this point for agreeing to work with me on the book, because I asked her extremely short notice and she said yes. Thank you. This book is a book about black artists in Germany, or black German artists who maybe no longer live in Germany. And it's about their perspectives of what they do with their work. It's about somewhat about the context that they work in, but also about what they would want to develop as a vision, what they are working to achieve, what they want to change about German society, and what they think it will take to do that. I'm really grateful that the foreword, Alex Wehe Leah agreed to write the foreword for the book. And then we have contributions from, I think, 9 different authors, various backgrounds. We have a dancer, a chapter by Bibiana Arena, who's a dancer. We have a chapter written by Kai Milner, who interviewed Mo Asumang, filmmaker. Giavira Lasagna is a journalist who wrote a chapter. We have visual artists, a sculptor, and Philip Carbo-Köpsel as a spoken word artist, and academics who all contributed. And I found the book a very important intervention, particularly because this time last year there were discussions going on in Germany about blackface, the use of blackface in German theatre. And one of the chapters in the book is one that I've written specifically about the use of blackface to actually represent whiteness, is what I'm arguing. It's got not so much to do with blackness at all. I'm going to read a quote from the Philip's essay, which kind of summarizes what I think is the main importance of why this book was published. He says, the important aspect is that today's of colour and black German artists leave their footprints for future generations. Today's problems might not be gone 30 years from now, yet 30 years from now, black German artists will make use of practices that will allow them to outmaneuver the dilemma of double consciousness. They will be able to present a positive individual image of themselves without being regarded as representational character of the entirety of blackness, of their body, their race, their ancestors. It is now that we develop these techniques, now that we find ways, and now that we take control of the environment that shape hiring politics, the planning of cultural events, and the infrastructure behind that. Indeed, it is now that we establish international ties that will allow a modern and realistic portrayal of Africa and the African diaspora. Every time this awkward feeling right next to the stage overwhelms us, we can neutralize it. Know that whatever happens now, it is still only the beginning. I would like to end my part of the presentation by reading one final extract from The Things. Going back to my children and my role as a mother, I want to read this last extract and to remind you all that copies of limited numbers of copies of the book are outside. Don't be disappointed. Run and get your copy. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. So, Beth brought me yet another note from school, written by an irate teacher to add to the collection. Here, she said, not making eye contact with me. I had already decided that I was going to read it later, but I still raised a questioning eyebrow at her. It's just Frau Berg, she yawned, stretching out her arms and revealing her belly button, complaining about me again, the usual. To be honest, in those moments when Beth is so above it all, even though she has just received a bollocking from a teacher and is almost certainly going to get the same from me, I regret being a parent with a responsibility to teach her respect and honour and the difference between right and wrong and the importance of personal hygiene and other such worthinesses. I just want to give her a high five and say something that ends with the word biatch. I admire her a lot for her ability to hold on firmly to her self-esteem with both hands, while all around her people attempt to shake it violently. I was never like that at her age. A few minutes later, Beth left me struggling with my conscience, for despite the serious furrowing of the brow that I had given her, intended as a taste of things to come, a complicated mixture of appreciation and awe had unmistakably danced in my eyes. I overheard her telling Ash the story in the hallway. He was always eager to listen whenever stories were being told of how revolutionary children had overcome oppression at the hands of their evil teachers. The story began with the words, "Oh, it was such a diss," the same way all great Beth stories do. Dennis presented his science project today. He made a Monopoly game, yeah, and we were all suggesting new names for the streets. From where I sat, I could easily see the expression on Ash's face, hooked. He was grinning slightly and gazing up at Beth as if he had fallen completely and utterly in love with her. I smiled quietly to myself. And that stupid idiot Julius, you know, Leia's brother, yeah? Well, he made that same kind of dumb shit joke he always makes. He said something like, there should be 3 roads called, well, 1 black, 1 yellow, and 1 red for the colours of the German flag. So Julius says, yeah, and Bethany should live on Schwarze Straße because... And Beth made a small nod of her head towards Ash, a gesture that approximated to, you know what comes next. Ash laughed. What a fool. And I shook my head in silent agreement. At least 20 years have passed since I was in compulsory education and apparently nothing has changed. Beth also laughed. I said, she continued, I said, yeah, and there should be a Krakerstrasse and you would feel right at home there, wouldn't you? He was so pissed off. Everyone was laughing and saying, "Dis!" And it was so funny. But the funniest thing was, Frau Berg, yeah, she gets all upset because she thinks we laughed at Julius because he's fat. Ash smiled uncertainly as Beth began to giggle, but eventually admitted, I don't get it. Holding her sides, Beth made another attempt to explain. She heard me make the cracker joke, yeah, and she thought I was talking about biscuit crackers, like saying he should go on a diet. At this point, they both began to roll around the floor, and even I could not stop myself from having a chuckle. She doesn't know what a Cracker is? Ash cackled. She doesn't know, Beth hooted back. Is there a more fitting assessment about the state of intercultural competence in German schools? There and then, I decided not to even bother reading the letter at all. Till can sort Frau Berg out. Thank you.
First of all, as everyone did, but I really mean it, I wanted to say thank you to Rose for inviting us and giving us the chance to share our books with you. And I wanted to apologize because I was told some people expected us to do some dancing or music, and we were seriously actually thinking about incorporating some smoke and fire into this presentation, but this is just going to be another PowerPoint presentation, so I apologize for that. Yeah. Oh. Is everything okay over there? Yeah, I think part of the confusion was this artist label is kind of following me around. I'm not really an artist, and I also never really actually worked as an artist. I did study art at some point, but I never made a living making art, so I think I have to revise my CV at some point. What I am, or what I have been, is a curator for the past couple of years, and a researcher, an activist, and I'm now what you would probably call an art scientist. And in all of these fields, I am, and I have been for a long time, concerned with the connection between representation and power, especially racism, but also other forms of power relations. Because I have not actually written an article in the book, I'm only an editor to the book. What I would like to do today is I would like to talk about the meaning of the book in a German context by embedding it within some of the recent political events and the political situation in Germany, and also mention some of the questions that are arising out of that for me as a cultural producer and as an activist, and maybe also explaining why we are focusing around the terms of revolution and visions in our book. And I want to begin by literally telling you where I'm coming from. I live in Kreuzberg, which is a part of Berlin, and I actually recently moved back into the street that I have been living on with my parents when I was a kid. And Kreuzberg has been known for its leftist politics for a really long time, for occupied housing, and also for the diversity of the people who are living there. But for a couple of years now, it's been an area of gentrification. So especially people of color are being pushed out of their sometimes social housing facilities, but also just random apartments to make way for luxury lofts and suchness. And one of the areas where this is happening in the most violent way is Cottbuser Tor. And Cottbuser Tor is a central area of Kreuzberg. It's like a big junction, and there's a lot of social housing facilities there. And because the problem is so prevalent there, an initiative has been formed that is called Cotti & Co. And Cotti & Co. Is organizing protests. They're raising funds. They're also running a makeshift cafe right on Cottbuser Tor at the moment, where you can get coffee and cake, obviously, but the idea is, of course, to go there and get some information about the struggle. So this is one of the things that's happening in Kreuzberg at the moment. If you were to turn around now and look across the street, on the other side of the street, you would see the Taksim camp, which is also a permanent installation, and people go there to